Раз. Тест, тест, тест. Тест.
Right, colleagues, please take your seats. We're getting started. Мы начинаем нашу панельную сессию. Пожалуйста, занимайте места. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I believe that we will be getting started. So the panel session will be held in English language. So if you will need translation devices, please take some. And we're also joined here today by Mr. Davranjon Adilov, and he will be delivering his presentation in Uzbek language. На узбекском, да, вы будете презентовать? In Uzbek language, so again, if you will require this translation devices, please use them. So happy to start and welcome to Cities at the Center of a New Growth Race panel discussion. So initiated, hosted by BCG. My name is Pavel Zolotarev, principal at BCG here in Uzbekistan. And I have an honor to moderate this panel session today. So it is about a simple but powerful idea. The future competitiveness of countries is increasingly shaped by the competitiveness of their cities. So Central Asia is not an exception. This is why today's discussion is not classic urban panel discussion, right? It is about competitiveness. How Tashkent, new Tashkent, can become places where people want to live, expats would like to move, companies would like to run their business, and most importantly, investors would like to invest in the country. These questions we will explore today with our speakers, and we have an amazing constellation of speakers today. And I believe that we cannot imagine better than that. Today we have representative of the government and even more, but also major urban development project. We have strategy consultants, we have investors, we have market intelligence and advisory experts, architects, urban planners, representatives of intergovernmental organizations, and allow me to represent also citizens of Tashkent and also expat community from my side. So today the speakers are here in front of you, and I am pleased to invite Mr. Davrajon Adilov, Director of the Directorate of the Construction of the New Tashkent City. And I must say that New Tashkent is not just one of the largest urban projects in the region. Yeah, okay. Thank you. It is a statement of ambition. Ambition, how Uzbekistan sees its future, how it wants to grow, how it intends to compete for people, capital, and opportunity. So, Mr. Adilov, we look forward to hearing how this ambition is being translated into concrete, actionable priorities, institutions, and actions.
Good morning, dear participants of the meeting. First of all, this Invest Forum, I welcome you here and thank you for participation. And of course, recently, in the matters of urbanization became the major problems, and it has its opportunity for movement in the economy and a demographic growing country. It is Uzbekistan and the Central Asia in the whole region from the point of view
ve yıllık 150 bin.
And we see the growth of urban population. And our distinguished President Shavkat Mirziyoyev started a very large project. That project is the New Tashkent project. And it is not just adjacent city, but it is expansion of the existing city, and 20,000 hectares of land were allocated for that, and construction started at 6,000 hectares right now. And it is infrastructure strategy we need to develop, and we invited large companies, international companies with experience of such projects. And I would not dwell a lot on that, because those who know that who are experienced in the architecture, they know its forms, and they participate here. The representatives are here, and they will tell about. And the main topic, how should a new city look like, and what the population should enjoy there and in the 21st century, and what type of opportunities and infrastructure services should be given, and what opened there, and this strategy, and to please the populations, what should be done. And I would tell about what has been done here. And first principle is a green principle, and what I demonstrated with. And I would confidently say that today no examples of such activities in any place. It is a centralized cooling and heating system, conditioning, and it gives a large saving in energy, and each person who moves, and vehicles and bicycles and walking people and individual mobility devices, all of that, it is scooters and running devices, and we need to provide safe traffic for them, not to give in contact with vehicles, I mean cars. And the specialists will show details of that arrangement. And now in 2024 to 2025 the construction is active in the area, and right now 3 generation stations work in here, and the high voltage substations is there, and also wastewater treatment, and water supply, and tunnels, and other infrastructure objects being constructed here at the investment projects. And in infrastructure itself, more than $7 million were already allocated. And as for structures, more than 2,000 square meters of buildings were built, and among them it is universities, libraries, concert halls, sports grounds, and other facilities, and other objects that have infrastructure significance. And this idea of 15 minutes availability of all structures in the cities is not only social objects like kindergartens or schools, other recreation zones as well, parks will be available, and also to the shore of the canal in 50, and the longest distance will be in 15 minutes walk. And right now it is in the face of global ecological problems. In order to create microclimate in the city, the artificial canals were planted there, and In 15 minutes walking, person will reach the shore of canal of the lake, a large canal, Karasu. And that it creates microclimate in the city. And the main sightseeing place in the cities, I think these are the main points. And of course, there will be other facilities of the international importance in the healthcare and services. And first of them will start the operations this year. And also there will be national library of Uzbekistan, and they will start functioning this year. And the largest library in Central Asia, both by the stock of books and other, it is outstanding. And I would like to invite you to go and see with your own eyes that city. It is 6 kilometers of distance, and there are vehicles, transportation, and you can go there and familiarize yourself with the construction practices. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this great presentation and for sharing with us all the plans and everything that is, well, under construction right now in New Tashkent. And maybe one question from my side, Mr. Adilov. So, from your perspective, from perspective of a leader of this project, what do you believe? What role should New Tashkent play? And Uzbekistan's other cities play probably in the country's next stage of the economic growth?
Thank you for your question. And of course, New Tashkent, as I have said, it is expansion of the capital. And right now, the capital, not only in the republic, but in the Central Asia, in the region, is a largest city in the terms of the economy and other aspects. And that project of the New Tashkent, that will accumulate all that conveniences, and it is will be city that will serve young dynamic population, and they may not willing to move on the vehicles, but they may, and there are mobile devices and walking, and they will be able to satisfy the daily needs, not using these motor vehicles, and it is emphasized in this new city. And those who are friends of green economy, and as I have said, the infrastructure is organized in this way that even West, they will turn that into electric power, and it will be distinguished and noticed by this microclimate, and it is a unique solution not only in Uzbekistan but in Central Asia as well. And it is what populations want to build their logistic, and as impact for the other cities, and there are underway large urbanistic projects, and they are attractive as well. And those projects, together with other projects, they are not competitive projects, and how I should say it, they are complementing each other, and they are correcting some faults in other projects, and that project is additional projects complementary to large projects, other projects.
Amazing. So, thank you so much, and I'm really glad to hear that New Tashkent will be this great addition as the most livable space and livable environment in the region. Thank you, and we suggest to continue, and I'm happy to introduce Vladislav Botenko, Managing Director and Senior Partner at the Boston Consulting Group, and Global Segment Leader for Cities and Regions at BCG. Vladislav works with cities and regions around the world on competitiveness, growth, transformation, and today he will help us place Tashkent into a broader global context. What makes a city a true city of choice and the new growth race? Vladislav, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, esteemed Mr. Adilov, for an inspiring and enlightening presentation about the new Tashkent. I get really from this that new Tashkent is not going to be a satellite standalone, but it really is expansion of the very successful city of Tashkent to be able to welcome the continued urbanization of the country and the big numbers of residents that are coming. I think that really is the right approach. And at this point, I'd like to show the existing Tashkent before the new Tashkent is built on the global map. And as Pavel said, I'm leading with BCG our work with cities globally. We work with Tashkent, we work with Middle Eastern cities, we work with American cities, we work with India, Africa, Europe a little bit, and we collect experience and data from all of the cities. Last month, we've launched our report that we've been launching for the last 7 years called Cities of Choice. We called it Cities of Choice because this is about choice, why people choose to come to a certain city. And specifically, I'd like to position the city of Tashkent in this report. Now, we call this report Built to Change. Think about a city normally is built not to change. A city is built to stay, right? And we call it Built to Change. I will explain why maybe in a minute from now. The report covers 80 cities globally. 80 is a big number, but actually it's a small number of cities that we have selected. We have selected the best cities of the world. There are thousands of cities in the world, and the fact that the city is in the report already says a lot about the city being a very successful city. Cities of choice. You've read the reports about cities, I'm sure, and some of the reports cover, quality of life, some of the reports cover jobs, some of the report covers security, some of the report cover tourism. We cover everything. In this report, we answer the question why people come to the city, stay in the city, and are happy in the city, right? We answer this question. And why people come to the city, there is a pyramid of dimensions that we call sometimes the Maslow pyramid of a city. First, people come to jobs. I mean, there are more than 100,000 people coming to Tashkent every year, as Mr. Adilov said. And they're coming, first and foremost, to get a better job, to make more money. But then very quickly they realize that life is short and they would like to have good life. And the good life is comfortable environment of living. The good life is the lifestyle options. The good life is security. The good life is greenery that Mr. Adinov you mentioned. And the good life is many other things that we cover under the dimension of livability. And then very importantly, when you come to a city, you're not alone. It's not just me and the big city, right? I have my family, I have my friends, I have my neighbors, I have my neighborhood, I have my buildings that maybe I know some people from, I have my district, and I have my city. And I want to be part of all of this. I want to trust my neighbor to leave my child for the evening, right? Everyone wants like this, right? And this is what we measure. We measure social capital, which is really how do I identify and trust the city? How do I identify and trust my neighborhood and my neighbors? That's a very important dimension. And then the government. I mean, we all have governments. Some government we trust and engage a lot, some government a little bit less, and we also measure this. And then very importantly, This was our scientific academic research in 2019. We've shown that economic opportunity, livability, social capital, and engagement with government is not enough to explain the variation of people liking the city or not liking the city. You need something else. We were scratching our heads for many months, and then we found that what needs to be measured is the change. The change, which means that if the city today is a good city, but doesn't change, people don't like it. They say, what's next? What do I believe that tomorrow is going to be a better city than today? And that's what we measure, and that's why we call the report Build to Change. I'd like to say that speed of change becomes the winning formula for a city to win the future. Speed of change. First of all, we always speak about infrastructure. We always speak about, skyline of a city, and this doesn't really change, or the infrastructure changes slowly. But what's important is people really are becoming more selfish in a good way. They say, what is it in the city for me? Do I save time in the city, or do I waste time in traffic and daily chores? Do I spend this time on meaningful, unforgettable experience? So I don't need to sit on my couch every day and watching the same movie, right? I would like to see more. Younger people would like to live several lives, as we say. Mr. Adilov, you say younger people would not like to take public transport, they would like to walk. Exactly, because walking is a more enjoyable experience than public transport. They would like to enjoy their life. That's what we measure. And very importantly, we measure surplus time. So I waste my time, or the city gives time back to me. Best cities, very short mobility, very easy to buy something nearby, and so you get back after you work, you did all your chores, so you still have 2 hours. You do whatever you want, to talk to friends, to family, you play football, whatever. And then salaries. People would like to make money, of course, but more and more they say, I come to the city if the city is very expensive, and I make money, but I spend all my money, I don't like it. I'd like to have investable surplus. Every month, I'd like to have a little bit of money to accumulate. I'd like to save this money, and I'd like to see the picture how in 5 or 10 years from now, I become an investor. As a young person, they say, and we interviewed like 30,000 people across the world, younger people say, I'd like to see how I am becoming an investor, not just someone who gets by every day. And now change. Why change? Number one, you see the world. This year, in the world, there have been more events probably, and I don't want to enumerate the wars, etc., but more events that maybe in 10 years, in the 90s, right? So many things happen, good things and bad things. And this variation is there, and is going to increase. And so city will have to adapt. Climate, let's take climate. Jakarta is going underwater. 40% of Jakarta is going underwater. Unfortunately, the water levels are going to rise, and some of the cities are going to go down. And this is only one example. Extreme climate, weather turbulences, hurricanes in the US, or just people say that now there are better cities somewhere else, I leave. And the city says, okay, but how about my tenants, my investors? They cannot function without you guys. You should stay. I said, no, I don't want to stay. I now go to another country, Singapore. I go to Singapore because now for next 3 years, I think Singapore is right for me. So people are voting for their feet. And so one of the reasons is the change outside, so you have to adapt. The other thing is, as I said, people see the picture today, but they would like to see a better tomorrow. And this is what we also measure. So what we want to say is, if the city doesn't change, it is going to lose. What is called moral obsolescence. Now the results. The results we grouped. Of course, we are not comparing Tashkent to, Beijing and Tokyo. We're comparing Tashkent within its groups, and you are going to see a lot of numbers now. And we have 5 groups of cities based on how big they are in terms of population and what is the GDP per capita of the city. Established powerhouse, emerging megacity, established global hubs, prosperous middleweights, and emerging middleweights. Tashkent is in emerging middleweights, and Tashkent is now, as you see, on the global map of our research that, as I said, we've been doing for 8 years now. Results. First, we measure advocacy. Advocacy is very simply the answer to 5 questions that we ask all the residents we interview in the city. We ask, do you see yourself in this city in 10 and 20 years from now? We ask, do you see your children in this city and your city in 10 years from now? We ask, have you recommended the city to a friend over the last year? Or have you de-recommended? Have you said, don't come to my city, you will not like it here? And overall, do you feel happy? Do you feel supported by the city? We ask these 5 questions, we average, and then we range all the city from top to bottom. And I can say that Tashkent is among the top 10. The top 10 are Middle East cities, some Chinese cities, then Asian cities, the US and European cities are in the middle, and then you have some of the cities that are lower. But again, these cities are not bad cities, they're just in the last portion of the top 80 cities of the world. So Tashkent is already in the top 10 of advocacy. What this means is what you see in the street. If you walk on the streets of Tashkent, many people are smiling. They're good mood. You don't see good mood, and you know, I visited 300 cities and towns worldwide over my life, right? You don't always see smiles. You don't always see happy people. In Tashkent, people are more on the happier side. This is also advocacy. Now, we said speed. Tashkent really is surging on speed. Here you only have the cities of Central Asia and Caspian region. And you see Almaty, Astana, Baku, and Tashkent. Clearly Tashkent, even in the cities that change fast, changes fast. It's more the perception of the people, but also the objective measurement that we typically measure, you know, the availability of credit last year versus this year. We measure, you know, the proximity to a park 5 years ago versus now. And then there are 250 indicators. We do the big averages. So this means something. And so you see that while Almaty and Astana lead on strong economic institutional fundamentals, Baku differentiates on livability, but Tashkent really surges on speed of change. And here you see a lot of numbers, but we really need to see that this is the ranking of the leaders. This is not the ranking of, you know, some kind of low subgroups. And you see in the ranking of the leaders that on advocacy score, Tashkent is 88, which is very high, as I said, in the top 10 worldwide. On social capital, the one that, you know, I trust my neighbors, I like my city, I'd like to be feeling part of a bigger, something bigger than myself. Social connections, social capital are good for Beijing, London, and Berlin, but Tashkent is also 74 and 79, very, very high. And then, speed of change, you see the dimension in the bottom right, and you see Tashkent together with Shenzhen, Riyadh, and this is the top 3 city. So Tashkent is a top 3. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Tashkent and everyone with being a top 3 city in speed of change. Tashkent is a top 3 city in the speed of change worldwide. And then maybe a technical slide. The speed of change is a big number, it's at the very top. But, you know, then you dig into what is change. And change is livability. You know, how do you change the comfort of everyday life? Is it changing? Then there's the change of economic opportunity. Okay, are people, small and medium businesses, which are big for Uzbekistan, big for Tashkent, are they getting more and more credit available for them? Is it delivered very fast in order for them to grow their business? Social capital, I said, do I increasingly trust my neighbors, increasingly like the history and the future of the city, and then engaging with the government, you know, e-government, is it also being improved, etc. So at this point, I'd like to end my brief presentation. Connect with me on LinkedIn, ask me questions, and again, congratulations for all of you here. who live in Tashkent. Also, congratulations for people who come to this wonderful investment forum. I'm sure investments are going to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vladislav. And maybe one question to you. So, thank you for presenting on Tashkent, but maybe a few words about the new Tashkent development, the Greenfield city. Do you see any benchmarks globally that could act as a North Star for the new Tashkent project?
Yes, thank you. Let me start with saying that Greenfield cities, so cities built from scratch, right? Cities, there is nothing, and then cities are being built. In general, is a very complex and difficult endeavor. And in general, it's not easily successful. So many of them fail, unfortunately, because they're late with the investors. There are mistakes in the master plan that they need to correct. Infrastructure is not coming. People are not coming, or they're bringing the investors, but there is little ecosystem of suppliers and customers locally. So the investors are not growing as they would like to. So it's a very complex endeavor. That's why I can say that New Tashkent is truly among the biggest greenfield cities being built today as we speak worldwide. So we said speed of change. That's also speed of change because it's really a big investment and very big and complex development. And I think I can mention a couple of good practices what needs to be done. Number one, the basics. Some greenfield city failed because they separated too much. For those of you who are urban specialists here, you know Le Corbusier, the French architect, who said 100 years ago, 1920, always separate the city in 4 parts. Housing, where people live, work, offices and factories where people work, entertainment, lifestyle, when they have fun, and mobility, because to move between these different sections, it really takes a lot of space for all these cars and trams and buses. Today it's different. Mr. Adilov, you mentioned the 15-minute city. Now it's going to 5-minute city, 1-minute city. Some cities are doing. Proximity is important. For very big development, what's important is that when you build houses, that nearby the houses, and you mentioned that you're doing this, you have offices, jobs, stadiums, schools, culture institutions, parks, ponds, everything within 5, 10, 15 minutes so people can walk. It's good for the people, but it's also very good to save money. Why? Because you don't need to invest that much in roads if most of the trips that people make are around the home. Remote work is also an important success factor. London in 5 years saved 1 day of trips, about 1 day per week. All the London people work from home. Singapore 2 days, 40%. So that 40% goes directly into saving the capital expenditures that the city needs to make in order to build bigger roads, more bridges or connections or hubs. So that's one, and maybe another one, and then I can have more if this is interesting later. But another one is really you need to build an economy, not just a city. Many cities have started with saying, this is a great plan. I like the skyline. I like the architectural drawings. Now we have this physical 3D that always look good. But a city is an economy. People come to a city for a job, right? Economy is the most important part of the city. And from the beginning, understanding what are your economic sectors, how are you going to grow these economic sectors, why will the investors come, why will the talent come, because people, young people, they also say, salary is good, but livability is important. I'd rather go to maybe another city, etc. So there's a couple of good learnings that every city that is being built needs to leverage.
Thank you very much, Vladislav, and thank you for building this bridge towards the economy and towards the investments, because our next speaker is Pavel Marciniak, Associate Partner at White Star Real Estate, global investor. And we're very pleased to have Pavel among us today. And you know, if the city ambition is kind of the starting point, investor confidence is one of the critical tests for the city. And the city may have a vision, but capital will only follow when the value proposition is clear, the risks are understood, the execution path is credible, etc., etc. And Pavel, you are the investor here in the room, and from your investor perspective, would you please tell us more about White Star Real Estate and share what makes an emerging urban market not only attractive but truly investable in your opinion?
Okay. The presentation?
And would you be so kind to bring up the presentation of the White Star Real Estate?
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And before we go into complex issues and our perspective, I would like to introduce our company so that you know the context of how and why we've been invited here. So White Star Real Estate is an real estate development company and asset manager that is fully integrated. And what it means, I will explain in a second. So we have more than 30 years of experience. The difference between us and different other operators, developers, is that we focus on emerging markets. So the story of our company is such that Brian Patterson, an US individual, he came to Poland in 1992 when there was literally nothing. He fell in love with the country and he convinced two very large institutions, AIG being one, the largest insurance company in the world, and Lincoln, one of the largest real estate developers in the USA, to partner up with him and form a joint venture that was called at the time AIG Lincoln. So we established an office in Poland in 1997, then expanded to Czech, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and Russia at the time. So throughout those years, partnership with AIG was absolutely great. We had unlimited number of capital. They loved how we perceived the risk and how we explained the risk to them. And we focused on emerging markets. We were their partner of choice for emerging markets. As you know, AIG bankrupted in 2008 during the global emerging market, during the global crisis. And so we did a management buyout. Right now, the company rebranded to White Star Real Estate. The company is 100% owned by partners, mostly by our founder. We have not changed the way we work. We still do real estate mostly. We still focus on emerging markets. But what really changed is that we have more than one capital partner. Right now, we are having more than 15 joint ventures with the largest private equity groups in the world that I will introduce in a second. So as of today, we have more than 500 employees. We've completed more than 70 projects, mostly in Central and Eastern Europe. More than 3 billion euro delivered of value throughout these regions. So what's differentiating us than other groups is that we do everything in-house, from land origination to permitting, construction, leasing, marketing. We do cover this in-house. You can see some of our developments here. We have been successful in other markets, including Spain, Italy, Germany. But we decided to cover and focus on emerging markets for the reason that we believe that the risk-adjusted returns in those markets are far superior. Some of our developments here are shown, and the main focus is that we do every kind of real estate, from residential to mixed use to industrial and logistics. How we typically would go into new markets is that we would first focus on logistics. The reason is that the capital expenditure is a little bit lower compared to different other classes. And once we have comfort with the current market, we would expand to different asset classes. We've been also very successful in CIS market. We've developed two of the largest office buildings in Moscow, White Square and White Gardens. Those alone were sold for more than $2 billion back in 2014. So as I was saying, we usually partner up with those large private equity funds. We would get the money from them and we would manage their money. So we, at the end of the day, we are in the business of managing equity, managing their capital. Some of the partners are here, but of course we have many more, including recently announced Singular Gulf, one of the largest US emerging market investor. We have an exceptional track record of value creation. So throughout the 30 years, on the 35 exits that we've done in Central and Eastern Europe, the average IRR was 41% and 4.1 equity multiple that we delivered for our partners. So long story short, what you need to know about us is that we are vertically integrated, more than 500 people. We do focus on high quality assets. We do have an exceptional track record in emerging markets. We want to focus on that further. That's why we are here. And it's actually proven. We have delivered a lot of value for our partners. So that's why we are here. It's great to be here and to give you a little bit of our perspective of how we've seen different markets being transitioning from this emerging state to actually being institutional, and how to deliver value in those markets. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Pavel. I would like to ask you one question. I hope it's not going to be very provocative, but when you look at the emerging urban market, right? What are the first signals that you actually check? What do you assess? Like tenant demand, like land framework, infrastructure. What is that?
So at the end of the day, it's just not one factor, because everyone needs to remember that real estate is long-term and very local. So the amount of risk and the kind of risk you're taking are very local. So I'm looking after the new business in our company. So I'm searching for those new markets where we can expand. I'm leading the expansion, and this is what I have been doing for the past several years. We have expanded to new markets that we have not yet announced, but there are a lot of things going on in the background. So how we think about the expansion, what we are doing. Of course, first it's about the fundamentals. So we look at GDP growth, we look at the population growth, we look at the job growth, because this is what is driven, the real estate is driven by those factors at the end of the day. And if the fundamentals are not great, why would you want to focus on that? Second layer that we are trying to understand more is whether the market has a potential to become what we call institutional. And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, the largest risk that we are carrying with us, and as I said, we are in the business of managing money, so managing risk, is about the law. So property law. Is the property law clear? Is it changing? Is it transparent, right? We are trying to understand it more. We are trying to identify key risks that could go with us during the development phase. The second part is overall rule of law, whether the courts are working in order, whether investors have been treated fairly in the past, and overall is the ease of business, of doing business, actually in the country. Is it hard to do business? Is it easy to make any business? What's also important for us from the perspective of risk management is, in the law, are there any restrictions on currency? Because at the end of the day, many of our investors are operating in euros, USD, or any other global currencies. And as a result, we need to take this currency risk into account. This is one of the largest risks that we are taking. So many of our leases, even in Moscow, they were denominated in USDs. In Poland, we denominate the rents in euros. This is what helps, to overcome some of the other challenges and to make, our investors a little bit comfortable with other risks that they are taking in emerging markets. Third, as you rightly said, we are looking at the demand side. Demand side and supply side, because every real estate market has its cycles, right? Those are relatively short cycles, if I may to say, because once you identify that there is demand, you're probably not the only one in the room that realizes that there is far too many tenants and not enough space. So people then tend to start the development, a lot of development, and out of the sudden you have too much space and not enough tenants. So those cycles, we are trying to understand in local aspect what's going on, right? Is this a market that have been going under a lot of growth and there is too much space, and then we can focus on, I don't know, buying some of the very core assets and focus on adding value through asset management? Or is there not enough space and we actually want to construct new space because we believe that we can get premium for that, right? And then the last layer, I think, is regarding financing. So real estate is very much one of the most leveraged assets in the world. So, and this is very important to us to not get too much equity into the deal. So we love to talking with local banks, with sovereign wealth funds, with development institutions to understand what kind of financing we can get. Is it expensive? Is it cheap? Is it long term? Does it align with our goals to hold the real estate and add value in the long term, or just play around and quickly we need to find another financing partner quickly, which we don't like to do most likely.
Thank you so much. Well, I believe that we all hope to see headlines and news of White Star Real Estate activity in projects here in Tashkent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm pleased to introduce Denis Sokolov, CEO of Commonwealth Partnership. And so City definitely cannot succeed alone with a vision, with ambition, or with the investors. It also needs market depth, business demand, so occupiers, services, etc., etc. And Denis brings a practical market perspective on what is working, what is missing, etc. Well, Denis?
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. We are real estate consultants and we are working here in Tashkent on the ground. So what we are doing, we are actually helping all parties to shape projects together in the favor of business, people, government, city, and so on. So first of all, as Mr. Adilov said, all fundamentals are here. So when we look at the figures, we see rapidly growing economy, urban culture, everything is in place. But what actually, it's not, as you all know, especially those people who live in Tashkent, who live in Uzbekistan, it's not the whole kind of very nice and bright picture. Because if we look at numbers, we can see that actually we've gone, over the last couple of years, we've gone through construction boom. And that's absolutely reasonable because because economy needed additional space, needed additional facilities to locate business, to create a shopping environment, logistics, and so on, and even residential. So there was a construction boom, and at a certain point, the peak was in 2022. 77 construction growth a year, so 77%. It was built in just 1 year, according to, in comparison to the whole stock. Of course, now the construction rate is slowing down, and that's absolutely normal. So we can see that construction boom is over. But what's the next task that we see before us? The next task is to bring this whole market into balance. And here I have not really good news, because what we see now is we see emphasis towards residential construction. Residential is used to be kind of the ratio between residential and commercial function, commercial and social function, let's put it this way. Usually it should be, depending on the nature of the city, roughly between 20%, maybe 15%. But now we see that actually the ratio of the newly constructed buildings, newly constructed complexes is significantly less. And if we want to see the balance in the future, even in comparison to existing pipeline of the projects that are existing in Tashkent, we need to have additionally 350,000 business square meters of business space, 500,000, 500,000 of modern retail space, and about 600,000 of warehouses. That's additional to existing pipeline. So it's actually a peculiar situation that the fundamentals are there, fundamental demand is there, but why developers are not building that? And the answer is here. Actually, if we look at it, it's a good example. Again, benchmarking. If we benchmark Tashkent against other cities in the region, according to the number of retail space per 1,000 citizens, it's very simple benchmark. It's not explaining everything, but it's a good point to start with. Tashkent is significantly below Almaty, Astana. So that means that we need more retail space. But why we're not doing that? Why we're not building that? And the reason is, the answer is very simple. Real estate is not isolated industry. It's driven by the demand, by people habits, but also people have habits, and in fact developers and businessmen also, they have their own habits. And in order to create retail space, quality environment, you need to have all the boxes ticked. You need to have international retailers, you need to have chain retailers, you need to have marketing agencies, you need to have all these players together. Then developers can create environment for them. But unfortunately is not there. So that means basically the task that is laying against us is to check all the boxes. Not only bring capital, not only bring expertise, but also bring additional partners, bring new retailers, bring new, let's say, flexible offices operators, all other operational businesses. And that will create, of course, the drive on top of the fundamental factors to develop comfortable environment and real estate. So a couple of words about where market is now. We're now just at the beginning of the cycle. That's again very important, because we consider, when we look at the market, we say that market just launched in 2020, 2021, 2022. And still a lot of developers, a lot of players, retailers, whatever, they still keep habits that they created during pre-liberalization era. They still there is a gap. The legislation sometimes is ahead of the people's mindset. And that takes, of course, takes time. And Vladislav also pointed out about the people, cities for people, but cities are also should be for businessmen. And businessmen need to change their habits the same way that the regular, usual citizens are changing their habits. Also, there is not only problems that Pavel pointed out with the land legislation, it also, the pricing of land is non-transparent, and the land market is very intransparent, and that's actually restrict the new development in the city. And also the pain of the city is that a lot of commercial space is being sold on block by block basis. The lack of capital, the lack lack of investment capital leads to the situation when developer has to finance the construction by selling blocks of the shopping malls. And as the result, of course, there is no way there can be a concept shopping mall or lifestyle center or something other thing that creates really good environment for the city. So in fact, that means for us, what it means for us, that we need to look at the city from different angles, from the angle of people, business, capital, investors, regulations, and also land legislation. And the last thing I just wanted to point out, today Tashkent offers a lot of different opportunities for investors. So there is opportunity to build small scale, for example, reconstruction objects, taking a small buildings in Tashkent, doing facelift of this building and leasing it out, and also that will take probably a couple of years, less than even 1 year, and up to the large-scale greenfield development in New Tashkent. So there is a full scale of opportunities, but of course not all of these opportunities are very simple and straightforward, but opportunities lay ahead of investors and operators and people who live in this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Denis. Maybe one small question to you, and yes, indeed, we started with a delay and we're kind of a little bit running out of time, but anyway, so if you could, well, kindly list the gaps that you see on the market that actually restrict the future development of the urban life of Tashkent. You already mentioned a few, maybe you would like to add more?
The major lack, the major gap on this market is something that glues together projects, so the operational business, because it's not difficult to bring expertise, for example, architectural expertise, construction management expertise. You can import that, but actually the expertise of local operational business is it's a very difficult thing, because Tashkent and Uzbekistan is absolutely unique country. There are lots of things that you just cannot take something from Europe, or you just cannot take something even from neighboring Kazakhstan, which a successful scheme bring it in, and it will work. We see a lot of, for example, we see retailers from Kazakhstan failing in Uzbekistan. That means that we need to create local expertise of operational business that can feel the existing and projects that are under construction with a meaning, with a business, with a drive.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for mentioning the expertise in architecture, and we're happy to move on with our next speaker, Manuela Gatto, director at Zaha Hadid Architects. And indeed, the city, every successful city needs more than just infrastructure, more than just investments or strategy. It needs identity, built memory, beauty, public life, but more importantly, it can help people to become meaningful if it has all these components. And Manuela will speak about how urban design and landmark architecture can contribute to Tashkent's future identity. And team, would you please bring up the slides?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. First of all, thank you for having me here. I'm Manuela Gatto. I've been in Zaha Hadid Architects for now 25 years, and I'm particularly looking after our projects in this region. So we were founded by Dame Zaha Hadid in 1978. So we've been at the forefront of design, research, and developments ever since, for 50 years about. We have been working in Central Asia since 2008. We work on all scales. We work from furniture all the way to city planning, large infrastructure. We have our own dedicated aviation team, for instance. So we really cover very large section of the market. And here you can see some of our projects in Central Asia. We have a tower with Citizen coming up in Tbilisi. We very recently finished the National Bank of Kazakhstan. We have master plans with partial development in Baku and other projects coming up in Azerbaijan. And our key projects are coming up, Alisher Navoy Center here in New Tashkent, and of course our Heydar Aliyev Center in Baku, of which I'm going to talk a little bit more. So this was our first project in Central Asia. We were commissioned by the Heydar Aliyev Foundation in 2008 in the memory of the president's father. I think I can say safely that it sort of evolved and into a very widely recognized master plan and landmark, and it really helped developing and kickstarting the transformation of Baku from the oil center industrial city that it used to be to the multicentric and very thriving city that we have today. I've been really honored of being appointed as designers for the Alisher Navoy Center here in New Tashkent. I'm just going to run a quick video just to show the project. With the Alisher Navoy Center in Tashkent, our ambition is to hopefully be as transformative as we've been with the Heydar Aliyev Center in Baku. So defining a landmark, which is not only, of course, a landmark per se, so not only a isolated building, but something that defines the city life and also enriches it and brings in culture and helps the city becoming part of a source of pride, of course, for the people of Tashkent. Now, I want to talk briefly about our work in China. We've been working in China for the last 20 years, and the reason why I bring up China is that really when you talk about experience in fast-growing city, that's where the president lies, in a way. We have, I think not only we've been working for 20 years, but I think we were very safely, I can say also we would contribute to knowledge transfer and the knowledge economy of China, at least in our sector, through our projects. We design challenging projects, and by designing challenging projects, we challenge local industries to deliver them. This you see on the screen is the Chengdu Science Fiction Museum in Chengdu, which was designed and built in 12 months. So a very, very fast design delivery, which didn't really consider any compromise. And I think it lies as a testimony also how proficient the Chinese construction has become in the last 20 years through the input of international architects like ourselves and many others, and really through the challenges we pose to them. And now when it comes about fast-growing city, of course, you cannot not talk about AI. And we know that Uzbekistan has adopted a national AI development strategy, and there is a path towards a very strong AI ecosystem to be developed by 2030. So we are at the forefront of the development of AI in architecture. We started in 2020. We were actually working on beta versions of many of the platforms, such as Midjourney, that people use online these days. With training, well, first of all, we're using AI throughout our company in every single sector, not only architecture and design, but also HR, accounts, everywhere. We are training our own AI model, and the reason why we're training our own AI model is precisely to respond very quickly to the demands of our clients and to be able to show them scenarios very quickly developed and respond to their briefs, again, in a very fast manner. And the main idea behind AI and urban planning is really to be able, for us at least, is to really to be able to show and study these degrees of blending between local architecture, vernacular architecture. We have a very strong interest in vernacular. We have our own design development and research on vernacular, including, of course, the vernacular architecture of Central Asia, and to see how you blend we can blend between that architecture to our own, let's say, signature architecture. And I'm not going to go too much into detail on the sort of platform we are using, but I can answer those questions if needed. We're also using AI in terms of gaming industry, and gaming applications are really there, again, on a master planning level to engage with stakeholders and to engage with the population. We have created this Reimagine Cities, which we developed as a joint development with Epic Games. Epic Games are the maker of Fortnite. And of course, this tool set is there to embed gaming technology into actual city planning and into architecture to make sure that then the design is really opened up to more stakeholders, not only dedicated and reserved to technicians. And of course, there's a lot of opportunities in this to develop, educational, participative, and also very community-driven parametric building of the cities. This one is one of the master plans that we developed using AI-powered planning environment. I'm showing it because it's nearly finished. It's a unicorn city in Chengdu. It's a new hub for China's digital economy. It's 67 hectares, over 1 million square meters living and working environment for 70,000 researchers, workers, and just residents. It's a 15-minute city. We were talking about 15-minute cities before because it's fully pedestrianized. It's lying over, it's also transport-oriented development, which is lying over 2 metro lines. There's a large car park below, but then the entire pedestrian environment is elevated onto a platform above the main road, giving access to the site, and the circulation is completely pedestrian. And here you can have a bit of a feeling of how it's going to be once it's finished. As I said, it's going to be a very kind of a small scale and very nature-driven pedestrian environment. And just to conclude, I think we played a transformative role in shaping emerging markets, as I said, over the last 20 years, where our innovative designs have symbolized modernization, but also global engagement. Now our work has demonstrated how architecture can drive urban identity, attract investment, which is importantly and at the core of this forum, and also stimulate cultural change. And as I said, with our challenge in architecture, I think we have defining, for instance, China's architecture renaissance. And in a way, this, it's a lesson learned that we can apply also to other national environments, such as Uzbekistan or Central Asia in general. There's, of course, an opportunity to leverage international expertise to create sustainable, future-focused urban spaces that reflect national identity, very importantly, but also boost tourism, foster economic development, whilst integrating into the global architectural and cultural landscape. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Manuela. And you mentioned that you are working on several projects for the new Tashkent as well, and this is great, and we all can't wait to see how they will be actually activated. And you have a wealth of experience on creating true landmarks. And based on your experience, so what makes a landmark project successful?
So I think what I would like to go back to what Ladislav was talking about before. It caught my attention. He was talking about social capital. Social capital is at the core of a grounded landmark, of course, meaning, yes, you can create iconic architecture, but per se, the risk is that it's sort of like a white elephant. And I think what is really important is this, for architecture to be very grounded and to really tap into the social capital and the culture of a city. So that's why we are very much trying to do this when we design our projects. It's not only about designing something which is internationally appealing, ends up, of course, in media, social media, and so on, but really make it something that gives to the city. So that's what we did, for instance, previously in many cities, including Baku. We really tried to develop the brief together with the client, making sure that whatever function and the facilities are hosted are really there to serve the population. And the more population feel engaged. That's what I was also showing about, talking about gamification of architecture. In a way, you want to engage the young population. So Uzbekistan, of course, is a very, very young population. You want them to be part of the process of delivering the project. And as they become part of the process of delivering the project, there's a sense of ownership. And yeah, so we are hoping that the Ali Chernobyl Center will design in New Tashkent will follow the same path.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So indeed, and all of that has to be embedded somehow in the fibers of the city, and this is why this is so important to plan the city properly. And I'm delighted to invite Hakan Akasi of Crossworks, and Hakan and his team are deeply connected to the practical story of the new Tashkent, how major urban vision moves from concept to master plan exactly. And I know, Hakan, that you have a surprise for all of us with a huge announcement to make.
I'm not sure if it's huge, but I'll do my best. Thanks a lot, Pavel. Hi everyone, thanks for having me. I'm Hakan. I'm the CEO and founder of Crossworks. We won the project in 2023 in a competition. I'm sure you've heard a bit about it, so I'm just going to give you a bit of a different presentation today. I'm just conscious I don't want to be presenting the same thing every time, and make this one slightly more interesting. So I'll be talking a lot about new cities, but in the context of other examples. And today I'll be using a historical example as well that a lot of you will be aware of. It's another Turkic country called Turkey, and I thought that we could make a comparison today between Tashkent and Ankara, just as a bit of fun. So when we won the competition in 23, Mr. Adilov, who was sitting here today, he gave us a mandate, and he said an instruction. And that instruction was make sure that this city is a benchmark for all of Central Asia and the whole world. The main objective was obviously population growth. People often ask me, why are we designing a new city? It's obvious. There's a huge population surge that's going on across Central Asia, and Tashkent is the largest city in this huge area that covers 350 million people. The population of the US lives in Central Asia, and that is growing. And Tashkent, being the main city, requires a framework for that growth. Without a framework for growth, this is what happens. You have gecekondu in Turkey, you have favelas in South America, and you have shanty towns in India. These are effectively housing caused by unauthorized and uncontrolled growth. If you don't provide a framework, ultimately this is what happens. There are examples of past planned cities of the past. Someone mentioned Le Corbusier today, the Swiss architect, and of course he did Chandigarh in India. Oscar Niemeyer did Brasilia, and Canberra, which is a slightly better example of a proper city, has developed initially as the administrative capital of Australia and now has turned into a proper city. Unfortunately, Chandigarh and Brasilia couldn't be considered as successful cities. They're simply civic capitals. What's unique about Tashkent is that although it has a civic center at the core, it is going to be a city for all people with all land uses. And that's what makes it so interesting and so intriguing as a new project. The existing city at the moment is about 3 million, and the new city will be an additional 2 to 2.5 million over the next century. So a couple of slides very quickly on the core of the project, on the reason we won the competition, and also some of the main structural elements. The project connects the river Chirchik and the river Karasu, and it does so because the Karasu is slightly higher than the Chirchik, and we allow the height difference to push the water through a network of canals that then create phases of development. We also connected the old infrastructure with the new infrastructure, so Tashkent is connected into New Tashkent seamlessly, so that when the city is completed, it will seem as though it's always been there. We also created mahalles. It's the same word in Turkish. Mahallas, I believe, in Uzbek, and mahalles in Turkish. These mahalles, or neighborhoods, are the core of our city. And each mahalle, at the center of it, has social infrastructure, cultural facilities, and commercial facilities. The key numbers of the project, the number that I'm very proud of, is the 28% green space, which is a huge figure. This means that on average you'll have about 20 to 30 square meters of green space per person in the new city. considering the World Health Organization only requires 9, we're doubling or tripling the amount of green space requirement per person. And then we'll get on to District 1. So this is the phase that is currently under construction in the north of the new site. It's actually very close to here, and this is the overall District 1 master plan view. This is the civic center, which is the government facilities in the center, but then there are cultural facilities and all sorts of other uses happening around it. These are some of the street views that you'll see as you walk through this new city. And these are the slightly smaller pedestrianized streets that you'll also see. And you'll notice some of these canals, these little tributaries that come off those canals that will create a really welcoming and actually climatically sensitive public realm. And then we get on to architecture. So the example I wanted to use today as a comparison of something that could be compared to New Tashkent, as opposed to some of those previous examples which perhaps are lesser good precedent, is Ankara. So about 100 years ago, Ataturk, after he took over the Ottoman Empire and turned it into the Turkish Republic in 1923, he invited Hermann Janssen to do the Ankara Master Plan of 1932. So whilst he was moving the capital of Turkey from Istanbul to Ankara, he felt that there should be a growth framework for the city. In addition to that, he felt that there should be a new identity for the architecture. So he also brought Bruno Taut and Ernst Egli, and they designed many of the civic buildings to try and say to the world that we're a new nation and this is our new architecture. In similar ways, Mr. Adilov and President Mirziyoyev are doing a similar thing. They're asking for a framework for growth for the new capital, and they're asking for a new identity for the architecture. Now, I want to be clear, the Uzbek architects will define this architecture. All we've done is provide some framework within which they can make their first step towards that new identity. We create a set of guidelines that look at scale, they look at proportion, they look at articulation, openings, and materials and colors. So we've done a great deal of work to kind of define the general principles of the architecture, but it's up to you, the Uzbek architects, to take these guidelines and create the buildings. We've left about 5% of that building stock that would sit outside of these guidelines. These are things like the Alashanovoi Museum by Zaha Hadid Architects, and a number of other museums that will be put forward, hopefully over the coming months and years, by star architects from all around the world. This is the current site. It's actually under construction as we speak. You can go there, but it's a bit dangerous, so maybe don't. But this is how it's looking. And as it's being constructed on site, we're also reflecting the update and the construction in a digital portal on our digital twin as well. So reality and virtual reality in the digital world are moving together. So as the project is built, we update the master plan and we update it on a portal. So perhaps for the first time in history, actually as a city is being built, it's also being updated in the digital realm as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hakan. And do I understand correctly that some of these renders that you have showed us just now in the guidelines, they were recently approved, and these are the fresh renders finalized a few hours ago, and this is the first public presentation?
Yeah, that's correct. They're actually in the video. If you go outside, there's a big model of our new city, and you can actually see it there as well. So, yeah. It's kind of an exclusive that you've just seen the latest.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This is great. And you know, I had a few questions prepared for you, but we had such an interesting discussion before the panel. And you shared your very interesting angle and take on the AI and the use of AI in architecture and master planning. So could you please share a few thoughts about this?
Yeah, of course. I think What I can say, sorry, I have to lean over. What I can say is that AI has effectively speeded up our process of design, but it's not replaced it. I think that's really important. Humans are still designing these things. We don't just let the robots do it. I'm sure Manuela as well would agree. It's just allowing us to speed up the process of iteration so that we can get to the final result quicker, but it's certainly not replacing it. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that any of those images are AI. They're all real. They're all images from a real model that we've designed and built, and then we've rendered it. So we still use quite old-fashioned techniques, but at least AI allows us to permutate and iterate quite quickly before we get to that final result. So that's quite important.
Thank you so much. And our final speaker for today, Irina Cherovich, Strategic Innovation Team Leader at UNDP. And Irina will help us connect the urban growth race with actually global development priorities, if I may phrase it this way. The floor is yours.
You may. Thank you very much. And it is really a pleasure to be here. So as last speaker, I think I would like to actually loop back to the beginning and to what we heard from the fascinating presentation of the Cities of Choice, the Cities of Choice Index. I think this was, I'm very, as coming from a development organization, United Nations Development Program, I really appreciate that there's a broader recognition of how quickly cities are moving beyond just the paradigm of attracting investment and focusing on economic growth and opportunities. And I think what you've captured under Cities of Choice, including livability and trying to measure actually connectedness and all of these other aspects, is critical, because this is where we see cities really demanding change and already experimenting with a lot of new approaches. So I'm part of our innovation and digital practice in UNDP, and that practice is very much grounded in cities in the region of Europe and Central Asia for us. We run a network of close to 400 cities in a number of different countries, not yet in Uzbekistan, but this is something that we are starting. And I would like to connect some of this work to what we've heard today. And again, looping back, what you mentioned as speed of change, I would like to actually take that a few steps further, because indeed we see that the capacity of cities to reinvent themselves, to reimagine how they function, to adapt to change, and to respond to disruption is at the core of what makes a city innovative and resilient down the line. And this is actually the practice of what we do. We try to equip cities with this kind of adaptive muscle, and we look at how do we take it from change in what is delivered to citizens in terms of services or physical infrastructure and so on, and looking at how do we actually build that adaptive muscle, that capacity to change, into the core of how a city runs, into the core of how a city plans its economy, how a government plans development initiatives, how projects are executed, how they are coordinated, how investment is orchestrated. And this is at the center of this. So I'll contribute maybe from three short points to discussion, I think, on this. And the first one on the why, I think it has already been mentioned, which is around responding to disruption, the state of polycrisis that is very much alive in cities. And this is, I think, for us particularly important as we look beyond capital cities and we look beyond the cities that are already winning in your lists. We focus very much on secondary cities, tertiary cities, the places that are still struggling with the compounding effects of decaying infrastructure, economic stagnation, very often the layers of conflict, health crises, climate pressures are actually interconnected, forming interconnected systems and challenges at the local level and compounding one on top of the other. This means, in practice, that the way cities are used to planning, particularly economic planning, so I'm not talking so much about urban planning as we've been speaking in this panel. I'm talking about how do we plan an economy, how do we plan development of a city. The traditional way that this has been done, which is a collection of sectoral strategies with 5 or 6 year timelines, linear progress, linear paths, and an assumption that basically those who are doing the planning control reality. These things, unfortunately, are starting to fail. left and right. So we see that these kind of traditional city strategic plans, even national strategic plans, simply don't have that adaptive capacity and that agility that we need to see for cities to succeed today, which means we need to be starting to build completely new tools and new approaches for cities, particularly that are trying to grapple with things like digital transition, green transformation, looking at systems that are misaligned currently and trying to build some kind of coherence. Otherwise, if we don't do this, we actually see efforts starting to fragment and resources being misallocated and the infrastructure decaying further. Now, the second contribution is on the what, and I think here the critical point is that urban transformation is not an event. It is not something that a city decides to do and then it happens and then it stays there. It is this continuous capability to regenerate, to reinvent, and this is something that requires a completely new muscle. So what is really a new kind of planning and new kinds of strategies, and looking at cities as interconnected systems, because urban problems, just like urban residents, don't live in silos and don't live in 5-year cycles. They live in long-term perspectives. They want to see a city that can show a future. This is exactly what has been said. In practice, this means that the way that we run economic development needs to become adaptive, agile, collaborative, which means talking to all of the people, the likes of the people who are in this room, including the city's residents, including everybody who's shaping the dynamics of a city. And it means running things in a way that is a lot more oriented on testing and learning, instead of grand master plans that will take a very long time to adapt. And in the meantime, reality will have shifted. More often than not, what we will see is that actually cities that do this, that tend to broaden the way that they understand value, the way that they understand economic value. They tend to start trying to measure actually these types of long-term gains in environmental value, in social value, in the kinds of things that actually residents care about and that make these cities livable and connected, and that make them cities of choice. This means that cities are starting to look for also new economic models, new ways that they will develop and that they will orchestrate this development. And in international development, we are seeing this move quite a lot. So many organizations are moving into things like mission-driven governance. The EU's Net Zero Cities is one of these initiatives where cities articulate ambitious missions and then orchestrate resources around this mission. And they're very agile and experimental in the execution, but the intention and the strategy stays, and that is that kind of rallying ambition for a city. And what these kinds of things help, or is they help cities understand and find a purpose for the investments that they're bringing, so that they don't fragment, that they don't have a collection of good projects, because collection of good projects do not make a great city. What makes a great city is that kind of really mission level ambition, and then the ability to organize and orchestrate all of us who are coming in and attempting to help in different ways, right? So this is what gives this identity and strategic intent. This is what really gives the city the capacity to have a strong pipeline and something that then can be invested in, and that others will recognize and that residents will appreciate. And I can give any number of examples here, but maybe one that stands out because it is under extreme circumstances is the city of Mykolaiv in Ukraine, which has a tradition as a shipbuilding and logistics center dating from back to the Soviet era, which has been decaying basically since the 90s. And after 2022, after the invasion of the city, of course, the infrastructure sites have been devastated. Thousands of sites have been destroyed. Half of the city's population displaced. And you would think that kind of a regular type of mainstream response to that would be, okay, let's wait for one big reconstruction plan to see what the city will look like in the future. But instead, what Mykolaiv did with our help and the help of a lot of its partners together is to launch this type of mission-driven portfolio of small interconnected investments that can learn fast, that can adjust fast, and that helped it build a completely new identity as a city on the wave, focused around the blue economy, so building on its traditions, building on what it already had as value and what its residents appreciated, building an entirely new economy. And by the way, it attracted only from Denmark about over $140 million already in investment and expertise by being able to set that kind of strategic mission. Or you take the city of, a completely different example is Stepanevan in Armenia, a small, quiet, decaying town dealing with massive depopulation. And the city was looking at the problem of hemorrhaging young people, people leaving for bigger towns. And while they were trying to address this and tackle this problem only through creating circumstances for jobs and economic development, it was failing. It was failing. When we went through a portfolio process together, a process of articulating a mission, of working with a number of different partners and orchestrating portfolios of experiments, in fact, that gave them a network of a whole ecosystem of interventions that they started trying and completely reinvented the city into a city that is positioned as a resilient city towards the future and where people can stay and orchestrate a whole range of different opportunities for its residents. And these examples go on and on. But what is then what we come to the third point, and that is the how. And this is there is a tricky part because a lot of our current systems for supporting urban transformation are not aligned to this kind of functioning. So the way finance works, the way investment works, is not agile and not adaptive and not dynamic. It's quite linear, and we still tend to measure things very traditionally and measure the return on investment in a very kind of simple way. So we are contributing to actually trying to also change the landscape for urban financing that would be aligned with these kinds of more innovative approaches that would help cities succeed today. So just like urban transformation is not an event and a collection of great projects does not make a city, a collection of individually sound investments do not make a great investment strategy for the city, right? That's not the landscape a city needs. So if the strategy becomes adaptive and integrated, then financing must become that too. And there's three maybe small individual segments in which this plays out. One is a broad kind of the general urban financing gap that is quite significant still in the region. And again, it's not a result of there necessarily not being investment and not being money. There is money coming around, and there is investment going into urban spaces. There are large IFI funded programs as well. But there is a misalignment between the types of investment that are coming in and the needs that cities are articulating. There is also a considerable lack in capacity for urban financing within cities themselves, of converting ideas and converting missions into actually investable, bankable pipelines. So this is one thing that we are building through a city finance advisory program, actually helping cities move from a coherent set of interventions into turning this into a coherent pipeline. The second aspect has to do with what we measure and what we value. And this again has to do with looking for new economic models and understanding what are the long-term gains that the city is looking for. Finance, quite misaligned. The types of things that need to be done, this is maybe most evident with nature-based solutions, for example. So while we know that the long-term benefits to health, to well-being, to connectedness, to probably livability and so on, of having a green wall instead of a concrete wall are tremendous, the alignment of current ways of finance simply doesn't go there, and these things don't get invested in. Typically, it's quite difficult. So this means a bit of an exploration probably of outcomes-based financing, of looking at how to fund the societal outcomes that cities want to see. And the third and maybe the most frontier kind of way of thinking about, new way of thinking about financing is actually systems finance. And this is this idea of cities becoming orchestrators of capital, instead of lining up one by one investments as they come and when they come, of cities actually bundling together interventions that might tackle at the same time things like youth employment, air pollution, green transition priorities, mobility challenges, and so on. So a city like Dakar in Senegal, for example, has devised now a bundle of interventions that tackle a number of these seemingly disconnected challenges in one coherent whole, in one coherent mission. And this requires a really blend of different types of finance. And this is where we are working with Dakar to actually help them sequence these things in a way that makes sense and in a way that allows them to align investors around this objective. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is super interesting. So do I understand correctly that the way you manage these topics is through introducing, well, specific targeted programs, right? The ones that you come and you implement. So my question is whether I'm right or wrong. And another one is whether you will be introducing any of such projects here in Uzbekistan specifically.
Yes. So we work very hand in hand with the national partners whatever we do at national level as well as at local level. So our urban transformation practice works with cities and is kind of embedded with cities and has a very long-term presence together with the cities. There's quite an active, deep collaboration with residents, with local administrations and so on actually articulating and helping take them through a process where they can articulate a new identity and an intent that's based on the local values and assets that they have in their ecosystems. Yes, we are initiating a new process in Uzbekistan that will very much be driven by or revolving around the digital economy and understanding how we take the benefits of AI and the ambition that the government has currently around AI at national level, how we make sure that there's benefits felt at the local level, how do we transform local economies, and how do we make the lives of city residents in Uzbekistan better through the use of digital economy and through participation in digital economy. So this does not necessarily mean only how do we deploy new digital tools in urban planning or in city administration or economic gains. It's actually looking at what are the sectors that are helping to shape the kinds of things that people really care about and that make them stay in a place.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, with all that said, I must conclude this session. We overrun a little bit, and I think that we believe that we need to wrap up, and I won't bother you with long conclusions and so on. If you have any questions, feel free to catch our speakers after the plenary session. And thank you very much for you being with us today, and have a great event. Have a great Tashkent Invest Forum. Thank you.